Hello, Sagittarius, and welcome back. Welcome to the part 2 of your reading. So this one's kind of interesting for me. I've never had such a long span of time in between, the part 1 and the part 2 of the readings. Usually what I end up doing is I will go ahead and pull the cards, and because I'm in like the flow so much, it's the message just kind of like spills out, and it's like I just end up doing everything like back to back. And this one was different because it's like that didn't want to happen. What wanted to happen was for, okay, because I sometimes need to have, not that I need it, but what I've noticed ends up happening with the readings is, and you can even see this in between like the times in which like I'll do a sign and then it might be like a couple days I'll do another sign. And what's happening in that space in between is that I am experiencing something that is going to help contextualize the message, to help give it depth, to help give it a sense of understanding so that you as the audience can like so that you and I can relate. um and it's kind of like I end up well, not necessarily that I'm experiencing the same thing that the audience is experiencing, but it holds like a core concept in it, which is what's needed to be touched on. And it seems like for you, Sagittarius, your reading needed to have space between part 1 and part 2, in order to give me some type of, in order to give me an experience that's going to help to contextualize this message that we are delivering today. so so with all that being said, it's really interesting because there's that space, right, that gap between part 1 and part 2. And just to bring up the framework of your reading, once again, we were talking about how the Queen of Swords is kind of like the minor arcana version of justice, and there is a perceived gap. There's It's like wasn't the bridge wasn't yet there for me to perceive the light. Oh, this is beautiful. For me to perceive the light of this message. So perceiving the enlightenment, it's like I needed to receive the enlightenment in order to make that transition into the knowing of what the message is trying to deliver. Like, what concept is the message trying to deliver? So we find you in a space where it seems like you are receiving you were in the hangman. So you are receiving the enlightenment that's going to help you transition right from that part 1 of your journey into like the next level, the part 2. So what we're being presented here, kind of in the it's almost like the part 1 wants to have like a little spotlight on it. And what it's referring to is this when you have fallen, from from such a height of enlightenment, and you've fallen back down into, I want to call it almost even like it, we're talking about enlightenment, but this could even be talked about in like a vibrational sense. So it's like reaching such a high vibration and then kind of like plummeting down, right, back into that page energy again. And so what I'm seeing here is, you're it's like with this magician card that was coming up at the end of the previous reading. it's like you're trying to decide whether or not you want to go back and pull yourself up into enlightenment again, and pull yourself up into like a higher vibration, if you will. And there's like this thought process that's coming over you. It's like when you looked back and you saw how far you had fallen down from enlightenment, it's like all of a sudden you realize that space, right? That space in between. And you're judging the distance and you're realizing that it is such a far space, right? In between part one and part two, that it's like you're kind of judging whether or not it's worth it. Is it worth it to hang yourself up by the tree again and lift yourself into this heightened state? Because it seems to me it's like you feel like every time that this happens to you, like every time that you end up falling from this, it could, it very well be like a higher vibration. Every time you end up falling, it's like you then realize that you're kind of like, it's coming through as like you're trapped, like you're trapped in another cycle. And it's like, how did this happen again? And then it's like, then you go and you pull this. It's like, remember, you have this tool, the Ouroboros. And so you pull the snake's tail, right, out of his mouth and hitch him back up again to your ankle. And it's like you're like lassoing it back up and throwing it back up on the tree. But it's like this time is different. This time is different. And it's coming up with a question of, is it worth it? Is it worth it to kind of like hang myself back up on this tree? And playing with that tension of, pulling that snake closer. And the snake, I feel, is talking about, well, it's certainly talking about a transition, right? It's definitely talking about like a shedding of the skin, because in order to receive this enlightenment, a shedding needs to happen, right? A shedding. I want to call this ego, a shedding of the ego. So every time this happens, it's like you realize that it's almost like you've manifested your own, um that's interesting. What's coming through is like a checkpoint. It's like you're checking yourself, you're checking your ego. And then when that check system isn't like when it's like getting really kind of like exciting, I guess, if you will, to pull that snake even closer. And it's like, oh, you can't bite me now, right? Like, it's like when that system doesn't work and you do end up getting bitten, um, what ends up happening is that it's like that's like the checking process. It's like you're checking your own ego, and then you fall, right? Because you're realizing that, oh, actually you could go even higher than that. And so then you go for another, and then you go for another, like, round at it, right? So what's happening in the second part of your reading, almost 10 minutes in, Jesus, um, is we're talking about the tree. We're going to talk about the tree that you are hanging yourself on, the tree that you are receiving enlightenment from. And this tree is presenting itself as the Empress. So the Empress, now when you look at the thumbnail, you can kind of see, okay, so let's just present it so you can understand where I'm coming from here. So we have the tree in the center, right? The tree is what you're throwing yourself, you're throwing your like rope, your snake, your tool of transformation is being thrown over this tree. So if you see the Empress here as kind of um, like that tree, it's like you're throwing your rope over. It's the pivot. It's the pivot. So the Empress here is acting as the pivot or the tree that you are using to gain a new awareness. So it's presenting as an Empress. Now this Empress could actually be like a physical person. It's coming through as a physical person, almost like somebody that, this could even be somebody that you have like conversation with. And when you talk to them about, whatever this hangman energy is, it's like they are presenting you with a support beam. They're presenting you with a support beam where you can find this enlightenment for yourself. So it's like they're acting as a support character. Didn't we say that you're going from a minor character to a major character? So this Empress, it feels as though they are it's someone that's in your life, like they're a physical embodiment. They're a person. They're a support character. They're a support character in this new like story that is unfolding for you, because it seems like you're on the next level. Okay, so we kind of have on both sides of this support character, we have this, well, it's framed on both sides as the Four of Swords on both sides. So let's kind of start. Let's start with when you're up. When you're up. When you have pulled yourself up and you've reached this like high vibration, high enlightenment, nirvana, that whole type of thing. You're able to see, okay, you're able to see everything kind of like a whole picture. So it seems like this Empress here is acting as a support beam so that you can throw yourself over and you can pull yourself up and you can see the entire picture. So when you are up, you're showing here as the Four of Swords. You're showing here as the Four of Swords. And this one, look at this crown. It's like this crown is beautifully awakened. You're very present. You're very present in the understanding of it's like you're very present in the understanding of how this dynamic works. How the dynamic of kind of like seeking out things that are it's coming through as like ego driven, seeing things. It's like it's almost like because you are in such a heightened state, you can see how certain things are ego driven, right? It's a very conscious and present like position that you carry with you when you are at that state, when you've pulled yourself all the way up. But remember, when you pulled yourself all the way up, you were still presented with that like snake that was in your face, um kind of acting as it's like the closer that you pull yourself up into this heightened state, the threat of that snake is, it's like when it bites you, that's the alarm to tell you that it's like your ego is present. And so, and then in that sudden shock, it's like you then realize that whatever has been happening, whatever discussion or whatever, the support character is helping you with, it's like all of a sudden you realize that you're kind of like operating out of your ego, and you have this wonderful like crown awakening, and you end up, it's like this is an intrinsic part of you. It's like you are very aware of how kind of like the ego can play tricks. The ego can kind of play tricks on you. It's kind of like, it's like this scenario, even if you were to pull this down, like the snake could be really close to your face, but not actually be biting you. And so it's kind of, there's a like a little bit of a trickster energy in between this. So it's like you're realizing kind of like the tricks that the ego can play on you. But the fascinating thing here is that it seems like it's all beneficial. Because the snake is like, it's a part of you, right? Seems like the snake is a part of you. And what's really interesting is that it's kind of also correlated with your faith. So it's like when the ego has a lot of flexibility, and it can move, and it can kind of like change its shape. It has that like snake-like ability. That's when it's presenting as like a detriment to you. However, when it's stiff, like this wand, that's when you can use it as like a support. Okay, this is interesting because aren't you, this character is a support character, and you're kind of using them to hang yourself over to reach this enlightened state. So this is interesting because it's kind of telling me that because you have this wand as well, it's almost like you do the same thing for them. Like you're a support character in their story. It's like you're both acting as in the same role, but for each other's story. So when you're up in that state, you're at the lover's energy. which is really beautiful. So it's talking about incredibly like a harmonious connection with uh well, one, with yourself, and two, with kind of like your relationship with this light, your relationship with this divine. It's kind of like um your relationship like with divine love. So, and it's really, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. But what's fascinating is that when you fall, right? So you're pivoted over this Empress, and when you fall, like on the other side of the Empress is the other Four of Swords. So it's kind of like it's two different versions of like the experience. It's like there's two different versions of the experience, and depending on where you want to position yourself is going to determine how the experience is going to like go for you. Neither experience is like, well, it's almost kind of coming across as like neither experience is necessarily better than the other. Like they're both, I guess, valid experiences. Um, but it does seem like when you're up higher, like you're at a this experience over here is like higher vibrational. It's linking you. It's your crown is directly connected to a higher love, a higher vibration, a vibration of love, right? And I'm being pointed back to kind of this the hangman, and he's got that his crown illuminated, and then you're kind of asking yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth it to hang myself up again? So if you don't, though, it's like you're still in the same place. But it's a different experience. So this Four of Swords here on the other side is, it's not present. You see how this one is very present? This one here is not present. It's coming through as sleep, as so actually it's kind of like solitary, like solitary. This is interesting, like confining yourself into a solitary way of being, because it's almost like I'm seeing him behind a glass. And he's also presented like, it looks like a coffin to me, like a glass coffin. It's kind of giving me a little bit of like Snow White vibes. Is that Snow White? No, it's Sleeping Beauty. No, it is Snow White. Yeah, wasn't Snow White in this like glass coffin? Anyways, um, so what's being presented here is that on the other side is like, it's not awakened, it's not enlightened, it's asleep, which is fine. And it's really interesting. It's like this is also a valid experience too. You know, because it's paired with the 10 of Cups. So it's kind of like it still has a lot of joy in it. It still has a lot of like comfort and, you know, fulfillment, especially emotional fulfillment. I mean, look at this. This is a beautiful connection. And, a third energy came out of it as well. So it is it is blissful. But there's something about it that has it's like a sleep. It's kind of like when you fell, like as a fallen angel, if you will, you're going from the divine and into almost like the mundane. So you're going from a place that is, you know, it's connected. You're connected. It's beautiful. And then when you fall, you're entered into this page energy again, which is coming up as like it's kind of mundane. It's like everyday. It's kind of like everyday life, domesticity, um, like the norm, if you will, of what life should how life should go. You know, kind of like boy meets girl, they have kids, they get married, all of that. That's what it's talking about. But there's something about it that for you is holding you. Well, it's not necessarily holding you because you have the ability to be able to throw your snake back over, right? And pull yourself back up again. So you're only in that space if you want to be. And there's nothing wrong with it. Like when you look at these two experiences, like they're both beautiful. They're both beautiful, gorgeous experiences. But just like how in your framework it was talking about, you're going from a minor character to a major character. This is the minor version versus the major. Um, it's like it's the same thing with this Ten of Cups and the Lovers energy. Like this is a minor experience. This is a major experience. So it's like, which one do you want? What do you want to experience? It's almost like you're being given the opportunity to decide whether or not you want to experience something that is going to take you to the next level, or if you kind of want to stay at this. Now I feel bad for calling it mundane, but or unless you kind of want to, or unless you kind of want to stay in this like page experience, like at this level. um And what's important to note here is that you pulled yourself all the way up. You know what I mean? So you can get back to that again. It's just a matter of, are you willing to do it again? Are you willing to, is it worth it for you? Is the distance that's needed to be crossed worth it for you? And I want to say that with this light element here, you're very much being supported by this. This Empress energy is supporting you in your movement. Because it also seems kind of like this relationship that you have with the tree, or that support beam. Seems like you're supporting them as well too. So it's like they're kind of, it's like you're buoying each other up. One of you has fallen, and then they are then helping you to kind of like pull yourself back up again into a higher vibration, into a higher connection with the divine, into a higher love. I'm kind of bringing back up again like that. I can't remember if it's Snow White or Sleeping Beauty, but the one that's in the glass coffin, if you will, like doesn't, it's like true love's kiss is what wakes her up. And for this, it's kind of like that. It's like the true love of this light is going to wake you up. It's going to wake you back up again. And you're starting off at the page energy, but I think you're quickly going, it's like you're quickly going to move into this major. You're becoming a major player, a major character. You're not just like the support. You're turning into a major character, and you're getting an upgrade. That's beautiful, Sagittarius. All right. I will see you next time, and thank you for watching. Bye.